to take no part in any conversation with the stranger. I was really too terrified to say anything, and besides the briefest of assents to Dicky's observations, the stranger said nothing. There was something about the man's whole personality that both attracted and repelled me. With one breath I felt that I had a curious sense of liking and admiration for him, and was proud of the interest in me which he had taken no pains to conceal. The next moment a real terror and dislike of him swept over me. I waited with beating heart for him to finish his coffee. It seemed to me that I could hardly wait for him to speak, for I had a psychic presentiment that before he left the table he would make known to us the reason for his rude pursuit of me. His first words confirmed my impression. "I am afraid, Mrs. Graham," he said courteously, turning to me as he finished his coffee, "that I have startled and alarmed you by my endeavor to ascertain your identity." I did not answer him. I did not wish to tell him that I had been frightened. Neither could I truthfully deny his assertion. And I wished that I had not evaded my mother in law's query concerning him. He did not appear to heed my silence, however, but went on rapidly. "It is a very simple matter, after all," he said. "You see, you resemble so closely a very dear friend of my youth, in fact, the dearest I ever had, that when I caught sight of you the other day in the reception room of the Sydenham, it seemed as if her very self stood before me." There was a vibrant, haunting note in his voice that told me better than words that whoever this woman of his youth might have been, her memory was something far more to him than of a mere friend. "I could not rest until I found out your identity and secured an introduction to you," he went on. "You will not be offended if I ask you one or two rather personal questions, will you?" "Indeed, no," I returned mechanically. Mr. Gordon hesitated. His suave self possession seemed to have deserted him. He swallowed hard twice, and then asked nervously, "May I ask your name before you were married, Mrs. Graham?" "Margaret Spencer," I returned steadily. There was a cry of astonishment from Dicky. Mr. Gordon had reeled in his chair as if he were about to faint. Then with closed eyes and white lips he sat motionless, gripping the table as if for support. "Do not be alarmed. I am all right. Only a momentary faintness, I assure you." Mr. Gordon opened his eyes and smiled at us wanly. I knew that Dicky was as much relieved as I at our guest's return to self-command. That he was resentful as well as mystified at the singular behavior of Mr. Gordon I also gleaned from his darkened face and a little steely glint in his eyes. "I hope that you will forgive me," Mr. Gordon went on, and his rich voice was so filled with regret and humility that I felt my heart soften toward him. "I trust you have not gained the impression that my momentary faintness had anything to do with your name," he said. "My attack at that time was merely a coincidence. I am subject to these spells of faintness. I hope this did not alarm you." He looked at me directly as if expecting an answer. "I am not easily alarmed," I returned, trying hard to keep out of my voice anything save the indifferent courtesy which one would bestow upon a stranger, for the atmosphere of mystery seemed deepening about this stranger and me. I did not believe he had spoken the truth when he said that my utterance of my maiden name, in response to his question, had nothing to do with his faintness. I was as certain as I was of anything that it was the utterance of that name, the revelation of my identity thus made to him, that caused his emotion. I sat thrilled, tense in anticipation of revelations to follow. Mr. Gordon's voice was quiet, but a poignant little thrill ran through it, which I caught as he spoke again. "Was not your mother's name Margaret Bickett and your father's Charles Spencer?" he asked. "You are quite correct." I forced the words through lips stiffened by excitement. I saw Dicky look at me curiously, almost impatiently, but I had no eyes, no ears save for the mysterious stranger who was quizzing me about my parents. One of Mr. Gordon's hands was beneath the table. As I was sitting next to him, I saw what no one else did, that the long, slender, sensitive fingers pressed themselves deeply, quiveringly into the palm at my affirmation of his question. But except for that momentary grip, there was no evidence of excitement in his demeanor as he turned to me. "I thought so," he said quietly. "I have found the daughter of the dearest friends I ever had. Your resemblance to your mother is marvelous. I remember that you looked much like her when you were a tiny girl." "You were at our home in my childhood, then?" I asked, wondering if this might be the explanation of my uncanny notion that I had sometime in my life seen this man bending over his demitasse as he had done a few minutes before. "Oh, yes," he said. "Your mother, as I have told you, was the dearest friend I ever had, and your father was my other self, then." His emphasis upon the word then gave me a quick stab of pain, for it recalled the odium with which every one who had known my childhood seemed to regard the memory of my father. I myself had no memories of my father. My mother had never spoken of him to me but once, when she had told me the terrible story of his faithlessness. When I was 4 years old he had run away from us with my mother's dearest friend, and neither she nor any of his friends had ever heard of him afterward. I had always felt a sort of hatred of my unknown father, who had deserted me and so cruelly treated my mother, and the knowledge that this man was an intimate of his turned me faint. But if Mr. Gordon's inflection meant anything, it meant that even if he had been my father's other self, my mother's desertion had aroused in him the same contempt for my father that all the rest of our little world had felt. I felt my indefinable feeling of repulsion against the man melt into warm approval of him. He had loved the mother I had idolized, had resented her wrongs, and I felt my heart go out to him. "I cannot tell you what this finding of your wife means to me," said Mr. Gordon, turning to Dicky. The inflection of his voice, the movement of his hand, spelled a subtle appeal to the younger man. "I have been a wanderer for years," the deep, rich voice went on. "I have no family ties." He hesitated for a moment with the curious little air of indecision. "No wife, no child. I am a very lonely man. I wonder if it would be asking too much to let me come to see you once in a while and renew the memories of my youth in this dear child?" He turned to me with the most fascinating little air of deferential admiration I had ever seen. But I looked in vain for any answer to his appeal in Dicky's eyes. My husband still retained the air of formal, puzzled courtesy with which he had brought Mr. Gordon to our table and introduced him to us. I could see that the mysterious stranger's appeal to be made an intimate of our home did not meet with Dicky's approval. I could not understand the impulse that made me turn toward the stranger and say, earnestly, "I shall be so glad to have you come to see us, Mr. Gordon. I want you to tell me about my mother's youth." End of chapter 32.